The city has a way of swallowing men whole. Some vanish into its alleys, others into its neon nights, but most simply fade into the background forgotten. For years I feared I was becoming one of them. My office sat above a pawn shop on Eastward Street, its dusty sign reading Private Detective. But truthfully, I had no cases, no clients, no one seeking answers. I lived in waiting, sharpening skills that never saw use. It was on a rain-slicked night that everything changed. I had dozed off at my desk, the taste of stale coffee on my tongue, when a sound stirred me awake, the creak of the stairwell just outside my door. It was past midnight. No one ever came here past midnight. I opened the door expecting a drunk or a thief. Instead, I found nothing but a book. It lay against the threshold as if carefully placed. Heavy, leather-bound, its cover cracked with age. No title embossed, only faint lines of symbols that almost made sense, but refused to settle in memory. I lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of something more than paper. Inside, on the first page, written in a hand sharp and deliberate, were the words, "The Secret Casebook." Every page was filled with cases, disappearances, murders, events that history had abandoned. Some dated back 50 years, others centuries. Stranger still, some pages carried dates not yet lived. I should have dismissed it as madness, but each detail was too sharp, too precise, written with the discipline of someone who knew. And then one entry seized me. The last train passenger. It described the midnight train departing Union Station. Every night, a man boarded the last carriage, a figure in a dark coat and wide-brimmed hat. His ticket was always punched, his luggage always stowed, his seat always warm, and yet at journey's end he was gone. No one saw him leave. No trace remained but the faint smell of tobacco and silence. Pressing against the windows, the final line was scrawled with desperation, the ink jagged and heavy. The passenger was never seen again, but those who sit in his seat claim to feel him watching still. I closed the casebook, my heart thrumming in my chest. For years I had begged for purpose, for something beyond the gray monotony of unpaid rent and unanswered phone calls. And here it was not just a puzzle, but something that stretched into the realm of the impossible. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain tap against the window. Tomorrow night, I told myself, I would buy a ticket. Tomorrow night, I would board that midnight train, and I would sit in that seat. The day crawled, stubborn as a bad memory. I kept the casebook closed on my desk, pretending I wasn't reading it again in my head. By sundown, the city's light thinned to a bruised violet, and the streets turned to slick mirrors. I locked the office, slipped the casebook into my coat, and walked toward Union Station. The station rose out of the mist like a courthouse for ghosts' iron ribs. Stone spine, a great glass clock that watched without blinking. Inside, announcements folded over each other, last calls, late arrivals, a voice that sounded tired of repeating fate. I bought a ticket with hands that didn't feel like mine. A clerk stamped it without looking up, as if he'd sold this exact ticket 1,000 times to men who didn't come back the same. On the platform, the midnight train breathed slow clouds into the cool air. Its windows glowed a pale butter yellow, each one a small stage with closed curtains. A whistle cried once, long and thin. and the sound threaded the fog like a warning. I climbed into the last carriage, boots thudding on the iron step, and paused in the doorway. Wood panels, brass fittings, green upholstery rubbed shiny by time. The air held the faintest bite of tobacco, the sweetness of old varnish, and something colder like the mineral scent inside a locked drawer. I counted rows carefully, letting the casebook's description lead me. Last carriage, 4th row, window seat. There it was. The cushion sagged slightly, as if someone had risen moments before. The armrest showed a notch where a ring had tapped and tapped and tapped. I sat. The fabric was unexpectedly warm. Passengers trickled in with that hushed discipline of late. Trains. A man in a navy cap who nodded to no one. A woman with a fur collar and a book she never opened. A boy carrying a paper-wrapped bundle, clutching it like a secret. The conductor moved through with the ritual of a priest, clipping tickets, murmuring thank you, his eyes never lingering. He punched mine, glanced at my seat, and for a heartbeat his mouth tightened, as if he recognized the cushion, the way a sailor recognizes a reef. "Enjoy your ride," he said, and the phrase fell wrong, like a line spoken too soon. The train shuddered and began to move. Lamps flickered once, twice, then steadied. The station slid backward, platforms shrinking into streaks, faces flattening into glass. Beyond the window, the city unfurled brick and shadow, roofs like sleeping shoulders, then gave way to fields stitched with fences and night. That was when it arrived, the weight of attention. Not a sound, not a shape, but pressure like standing at the lip of a stairwell and knowing there's another step you can't see. The hairs on my arms rose. I let my gaze travel the carriage slowly, a lazy sweep that tried too hard to look lazy. The woman breathed through her nose, steady, the page still unturned. The cap man watched his reflection instead of the dark. The boy counted under his breath, touching the corners of the bundle. 1, 2, 3, 4. No one looked at me, yet I felt as if someone sat close enough to borrow my breath. I slipped a hand to my coat and touched the casebook. The leather seemed cooler than before, a stone pulled from riverbed. I pressed it flat against my thigh and tried to listen past the rhythm of the wheels. Beneath metal and motion, another pattern beat a faint tapping, irregular as a nervous habit. It came from below or within or nowhere at all. The window held my face and the carriage behind me, a dim silver reflection. For a heartbeat I saw a second hat brimmed beside my own, a darker oar of shadow rowing the light. I blinked and it was gone. I told myself this was why I'd come, to sit in the exact place where reason loosens and stories grow bones. But wanting a thing and holding it are different kinds of bravery. I let the train carry me forward, deeper into its artery of corridors and night. Somewhere ahead, a signal bell rang, distant as a memory. The carriage exhaled. The tapping stopped. "Almost there," the conductor said softly from the aisle, though we had only just begun. The midnight train had its own rhythm, a pulse that beat beneath everything else. The wheels hammered their pattern, steady as a heartbeat. Yet in between the sounds I kept catching something else, a faint, irregular tapping, like a pen against wood. At first I thought it belonged to a passenger, perhaps the boy with the bundle, or the man in the cap who tapped his foot now and then. But no, this was different. It came from nowhere fixed. Sometimes beneath my seat, sometimes above, sometimes inside my own skull. I shifted in the cushion, warm still, far too warm for a seat no one should have occupied since. Yesterday or the day before, or the week before, the casebook had said nothing about time. How many nights had this passenger supposedly appeared? How many times had he vanished? The woman in the fur collar shifted slightly, turning a page she hadn't read. Her lips moved once, not in words, but in breath. The boy unwrapped his bundle just a little, and I caught the glimmer of something metallic before he hid it again. The man in the cap pinched his nose as though fighting sleep. Ordinary details, harmless details, except for the way my chest tightened with the certainty that one detail didn't belong. I let my gaze settle on the glass window opposite me, where the carriage reflected itself in dull silver. There I was leaned back, eyes shadowed. Behind me the rows of passengers, all accounted for. Except, not quite. The reflection showed a shape in the empty aisle seat beside mine. Just the suggestion of a shoulder, the slope of a hat brim, black against black. I turned quickly, nothing there. The train jolted around a bend, and the lamps swung slightly. For an instant, the cushion beside me shifted, the fabric creasing as if weight had pressed into it. My throat dried. The conductor returned, stepping with the calmness of a man who had walked these aisles for years. His lantern bobbed, throwing pale light across the seats. He checked the boy's ticket, then the woman's, then the man in the cap. When his gaze slid to me, his hand lingered on the brass rail a beat too long. "You're in that seat," he murmured. His voice was almost drowned by the rattle of wheels, but not enough. "Yes," I said. "That a problem?" The conductor hesitated, eyes flicking to the cushion beside me, the one that still bore its phantom crease. Then he looked back at me, face smooth, voice steady. "Just stay awake." He moved on before I could ask anything else. The tapping returned, louder now, keeping time with my pulse. I tightened my grip on the casebook in my coat. Its weight felt heavier than ever, as if the book itself wanted me to know the passenger was close, very close, and if I was not careful, I might not be the one to vanish. The carriage darkened as the train plunged through a tunnel. Lamps flickered, shadows stretching tall across the paneled walls. In that half-second of stuttering light, I swore the seat beside me was no longer empty. A figure leaned forward, hat brim low, coat pressed tight. When the light steadied, the cushion was vacant again, but the air felt heavier, crowded. My breath misted faintly, though the carriage was warm. No one else seemed to notice. The woman's face stayed fixed to her unread book. The boy counted silently on his fingers. The man in the cap dozed with his chin against his chest. Ordinary people locked in their ordinary worlds, while mine tilted into something stranger. I touched the casebook through my coat pocket, reassuring myself that it was still real, still solid. But its pages had offered no advice, only a record, a warning, and that last line scratched in desperation. Those who sit in his seat claim to feel him watching still. The train groaned around a curve. Something brushed my sleeve, too deliberate to be the sway of the carriage. Cold fingers, unseen but undeniable. I turned sharply, but the space beside me was a void. the seat sagging faintly, as though it bore invisible weight. I pressed my hand flat against the cushion. It resisted, warm one moment, icy the next, as though it carried two realities layered over each other. My skin tingled, hairs lifting on my arm. Then came the whisper, not from the passengers, not from the wheels or rails, but right at my ear. A single word, stretched thin as smoke. Leave. I froze. My eyes darted around the carriage. No one looked at me. No lips moved. Only the steady rhythm of travel filled the silence. I told myself I was tired, half dreaming. But deep down I knew something was here, something that did not belong among the living. The conductor returned again, lantern swinging, eyes searching. He stopped at my row, lips tightening. "You feel it?" he asked softly. I didn't answer. He set his lantern on the brass rail, leaned closer, and in the hush between wheel strikes said, "Don't stay past the third stop. Whatever you do, don't." Before I could question him, he straightened, clipped the boy's bundle with his lantern light, and walked on, leaving me in a pool of flickering glow. The train surged forward, faster now, the night pressing thick against the windows. My hand gripped the casebook, knuckles white. The warning echoed inside me, louder than the rails, louder than the tapping. Don't stay past the third stop. And yet a darker part of me whispered back, that's exactly what I intend to do. The whistle shrieked long and low as the train slowed toward its first station. Through the fogged glass I glimpsed a lonely platform lit by a single lamp. No one stood waiting. The town itself was swallowed in blackness, as though sleep had devoured every street. The brakes screamed, sparks flashing against the night, and the carriage lurched before easing to a crawl. My fellow passengers hardly stirred. The boy hugged his bundle closer. The woman licked her finger and turned a page of her book still unread. The man in the cap rubbed his eyes but did not rise. The doors opened with a sigh. Cold air rolled in. No one boarded. And yet, when I turned back toward the seats, one was empty. The man in the cap was gone. His place across the aisle sat hollow, his newspaper folded neatly on the cushion, his hat resting atop it. Not a single passenger reacted. The woman did not raise her eyes. The boy did not pause in his silent counting. I rose, steadying myself on the brass rail. "Did anyone see him leave?" I asked. No reply, not even a blink. The platform stretched outside, bare and waiting. I leaned into the doorway, lantern glow spilling across wooden planks. No footsteps, no retreating figure, only the hush of a town that slept too deeply. "Sir," I called softly, "you've forgotten your hat." The silence that answered me was worse than any voice. The conductor appeared then, his lantern bobbing at the far end of the carriage. He moved with the patience of a man repeating an old routine. When his light touched the empty seat, he hesitated just for a breath, then looked at me. His expression did not shift, but his voice carried weight. "First stop. That man, he was here," I insisted. "A moment ago. He can't have." "First stop," the conductor repeated, firmer this time, as if it explained everything. Before I could argue further, the doors hissed shut. The whistle pierced the dark once more, and the train shuddered back into motion. I stared at the abandoned seat. The hat trembled faintly, just once, as though a hand had brushed past it. Then it stilled. The boy lifted his gaze for the first time, eyes too wide, too knowing for his age. "It's begun," he whispered, almost inaudible beneath the grind of wheels. My heart drummed in answer. The casebook had warned me. Each stop one vanishes. And now the first had fallen. The train gathered speed again, plunging deeper into night. The first station was already a memory, its lone lamp swallowed by the blackness beyond the glass. Inside the carriage, nothing had changed except for the empty seat where the man in the cap had been. His hat still lay across the folded newspaper like an abandoned relic, too deliberate to ignore. I leaned forward. "Boy," I said quietly, "you saw it, didn't you?" His eyes flicked up from the bundle he held so tightly to his chest. The lamplight caught them, sharp and knowing, though he said nothing. "You spoke," I pressed. "It's begun," you said. "What did you mean?" The boy clutched the bundle tighter, arms shaking faintly. The cloth strained, hinting again at something metallic beneath, gleaming dully as the train rattled. A weapon? An object? Whatever it was, he guarded it with the kind of possessiveness that suggested it wasn't his to begin with. The woman across from us turned a page. The sound was deliberate this time, louder than before, as though she wanted to mask our conversation. But her eyes never left the paper's blank lines. "Listen," I whispered, lowering my tone to match the hum of the rails. "I'm not here to frighten you. I'm here because of the casebook. I know about the passenger. I know what this train carries." The boy blinked. For a heartbeat, I thought he would remain silent, sealed away in whatever vow he had made. Then his lips parted. "You shouldn't have sat there." His voice was thin, wavering, but clear enough to cut through the rattle of the train. The words lodged deep in my chest. "Why?" His gaze darted to the empty seat beside me, the one that bore invisible weight, the one I could not shake from my senses. His throat worked as though he were swallowing stones. "They choose," he whispered. "Always someone. Every stop." The train tilted around a curve, lanterns swaying, shadows sliding like black water across the walls. I felt the cushion beside me sink once more, unseen pressure folding into the fabric. "And the bundle?" I asked. "What are you carrying?" The boy flinched. "It's his." Before I could press further, the whistle shrieked again high, urgent, like a scream torn from metal lungs. The second stop loomed ahead, platform lights glowing faintly in the distance. The boy gripped the bundle so hard his knuckles went white. His voice shook, barely audible. "The next will vanish, and then it's your turn." The whistle's cry bled into the night as the train slowed, grinding against the rails. Outside, faint lamps emerged through mist, outlining another platform that looked eerily identical to the last same. Lonely pole light, same wooden boards damp with fog. I half wondered if the train was circling the same station again and again, trapping us in some endless loop. The woman across from me finally closed her book, snapping it shut with a sharp sound. She set it neatly on her lap, but did not meet my eyes. The boy shifted in his seat, bundle pressed tighter against his chest. The cushion beside me remained subtly sunken, as though someone unseen leaned closer, listening. The doors opened with a hiss. The cold air crept in, carrying the faint smell of iron and rain. This time the woman in the fur collar rose. She stood slowly, almost ritualistically, as if answering a summons she could not resist. Her eyes never flicked to the platform. They stayed fixed on the aisle, on something just beyond my vision. "Ma'am," I said sharply, "wait." She did not falter, did not acknowledge me. Step by step she moved down the aisle, heels tapping with unnatural precision. When she'd passed the conductor, he lowered his lantern, saying nothing, offering no hand to stop her. She reached the doors. The fog swallowed her, and then silence. I bolted to my feet, peering into the thick dark outside. She wasn't on the platform, not boarding, not departing down the stairs. She had dissolved into the mist, like the man before her. When I turned back, her seat was empty. But unlike the first, there was no hat or folded paper to prove she'd ever existed. Only a faint indentation remained in the cushion, already rising back to smoothness. The boy trembled visibly now. "Second stop," he whispered, eyes wet. The conductor approached. Lantern glow trembling faintly as if even the flame feared this truth. His face looked carved from stone, but his voice betrayed a trace of something resignation, perhaps, or pity. "Two gone," he said. "One more." I clenched my fists. And then? He met my eyes for the first time. Then the passenger takes his seat. The carriage jolted as the train pulled away, lamps flickering. My heart pounded against my ribs. But beneath the fear there was something else, curiosity, terrible and irresistible, because part of me already knew the casebook hadn't chosen me by chance. It wanted me here, on this train, in this very seat. The train surged onward, the night outside impenetrable. Like the world itself had dissolved into darkness. I sat frozen, shoulder angled away from the space beside me, yet unable to resist glancing at it again and again. The cushion sagged in a way cushions shouldn't sag without weight. I could swear the faintest crease marked where a sleeve might press. Whenever the lamps flickered, the outline of a figure teased my eyes, broad-shouldered, head bent slightly, hat brim low. I told myself it was imagination, but the casebook had warned me. His presence lingers. Sit where he sat, and you'll feel him watching. The boy stared at me as if waiting for something inevitable. His arms tightened around the bundle, and his lips formed silent words I couldn't catch. I leaned forward. "What is it?" He shook his head. "Not to you, to him." His eyes flicked to the empty seat. I felt a prickle crawl down my neck. "He hears?" The boy nodded, barely perceptible. For the first time, I tried speaking not to the child or conductor, but to the unseen thing at my side. "If you're here," I murmured, "why me?" The train groaned through another curve. The lantern light dipped. Then came the answer. Not sound, not exactly. More like pressure words pressed directly into the fabric of my skull. "Because you stayed." The breath left my lungs. My grip tightened on the casebook, its cracked spine digging into my palm. The boy shivered, head bowed as though he too had heard. I forced myself to swallow to steady my voice. "You take them, each stop? What happens after the third?" The cushion shifted, creaking faintly. Cold brushed my arm like breath. The reply was slower this time, dragging through me. "Then I ride again." The words lingered, heavier than steel. until the whistle pierced the night once more. The third station loomed ahead. Its lamps burned brighter than the others, casting long fingers of light across the fog. I turned toward the boy. If what you say is true, he'll claim someone now. The boy's lips moved, finally voicing the thought etched into his gaze. Not someone, you. The brakes screamed, sparks showering the darkness. The train crawled into the station, and beside me the invisible passenger leaned closer, waiting. The train screeched against the rails, sparks flickering through the night like fireflies. My chest tightened. This was at the third stop, the one the conductor had warned me about. Through the window, the platform spread out under stark white lamps, brighter than the two before. The light was too harsh, washing the boards in pallor as though no shadow dared rest there. For a moment I thought salvation waited outside, a chance to leave. The doors opened with a hollow sigh. The fog did not follow us here. The air smelled sharp, metallic, cold. No one moved. The boy stayed rigid with his bundle. The conductor held his lantern higher, flame quivering in its glass, his jaw locked tight. The seat beside me sagged deeper, groaning under invisible weight. My skin burned where unseen fingers grazed my sleeve. Then a voice inside me, low and insistent. Your turn. I braced myself, forcing words past a dry throat. If you wanted me, you could have taken me already. Why wait until the third stop? The answer came like iron scraping across stone. Rules. I turned toward the boy, desperate. What rules? He swallowed hard, eyes shimmering. He rides only if someone gives him passage. The first two vanished to open the path. The third, his voice faltered. The third must remain so he can take the seat. The platform yawned outside, empty and waiting. I could step off, walk away, pretend none of this had ever happened. But then the casebook's words echoed back. Each stop, one vanishes. At the third, the passenger rides again. If I left, who would stop him? Who would record the truth? The conductor moved closer, his face caught between duty and fear. You should go, he said hoarsely, before the doors close. Don't look back. The cushion beside me sagged further, invisible pressure pushing into my ribs. Cold seeped through my coat, cutting to the bone. I stood halfway, caught between the platform's light and the unseen pull of the seat. My heart pounded. The boy whispered one last plea. If you stay, you won't be you anymore. The whistle wailed. The doors began to slide shut, and I, against every rational thought, sat back down. The seat groaned in welcome. The air turned icy. The passenger had returned. The doors sealed with a hollow clang, shutting me inside with my decision. The train lurched forward, faster than before, as though eager to leave the station behind. The cushion beneath me pressed down harder, no longer merely sagging but indenting deeply as though an unseen weight had fully claimed its place. Cold radiated into my side, seeping into my bones. My breath fogged with each exhale, though the lamps burned bright above. I turned slightly, against every instinct. Nothing visible, only a distortion in the air, like heat rising from pavement but inverted, draining warmth instead of giving it. A shape sat there, undeniable now. The boy buried his face against his bundle, whispering frantic words too fast to follow. Prayers, maybe. Desperation, his knuckles blanched white. The conductor stood frozen at the aisle, lantern trembling faintly. For the first time, his mask of routine cracked. His eyes darted to the space beside me, then away. Unable to bear the sight of what his duty forced him to accompany night after night, I clenched the casebook tighter, knuckles aching. "You wanted this," I muttered toward the invisible presence. "You've returned. Now tell me why." The voice came sharp and cold, slicing through thought like a blade. "To finish the journey." "What journey?" I pressed. "Where does this train end?" The reply was slower, weighted, as if each word dragged chains behind it. "Where I was denied." The carriage groaned. The lamps flickered. For an instant, every face around me blurred, their outlines warping like figures in melted glass. When the light steadied, the woman's abandoned book had slid to the floor, though no hand had touched it. I could feel the passenger lean closer. His presence pushed against me, nearly overlapping, as if he meant to slide beneath my skin into my very frame. My heart thundered. I forced myself not to move, not to yield. The boy's whisper cut through the hum of the train. "If he finishes the ride, he doesn't leave." His eyes lifted, glimmering with terror. "He takes the one who sat in his seat." My grip on the casebook faltered. The cracked leather dug into my palm. The train roared louder, speed building, the windows rattling in their frames. Every sense screamed that the journey had only just begun, and that by choosing to stay, I had become more than a witness. I was the vessel. The train thundered deeper into night, faster than before, as if the rails themselves urged us toward some unseen destination. The lamps overhead buzzed faintly, flickering at intervals that made every shadow twitch. The passenger's weight pressed hard against me, now real, heavy, inescapable. The boy would not lift his head. He rocked with the rhythm of the wheels, whispering his secret prayers into the bundle's cloth. At last the conductor broke. He set his lantern down on the brass rail, the flame jittering like a trapped moth, and crouched beside me. For the first time I saw sweat on his brow. "You've gone further than any fool before you," he said hoarsely. "Most leap off before the third stop. The brave ones wait too long, and they're never seen again." I leaned forward. "Then tell me the truth. What is this? What is he?" The conductor's eyes flicked to the empty seat, empty to the eye, heavy to the body. His lips tightened. "He was a man once, years ago, a traveler who boarded at midnight, as you did, except he never left. The train carried him past his stop, past every stop, until he wasn't a man anymore." The words settled over me like ash. "Why does he return?" The conductor's jaw clenched. "Because he was denied a destination, and until he reaches it, he drags others into his journey. He needs someone living to anchor him, someone in his seat." I swallowed hard. "So the vanishings every stop. Passengers given up," the conductor finished, his voice raw. "Each one a toll. And when the third goes, the path clears. He rides again." The seat beside me creaked loudly, as if the invisible thing shifted to listen. Cold brushed the side of my neck. "Why not end it?" I demanded. "Why keep the train running at all?" The conductor's hand tightened around the lantern, handle until his knuckles whitened. because ending it would mean facing him, and no man dares that. He glanced at me then, eyes hollow. Until tonight. The casebook burned hot in my coat pocket, though its leather was cold to the touch. I had not written those records. Someone else had sat where I sat, scribbling their last account before vanishing. Perhaps I would add my words to theirs, or perhaps I would be nothing more than another crease in this cursed seat. The conductor's voice dropped to a whisper. Pray you don't last until the final stop. The passenger's chill pressed harder into my side, as though amused by the warning. The train wailed into another stretch of darkness, wheels hammering faster, as though something hunted us from behind. The lamps overhead dimmed again, shadows clawing long across the carriage. I sat rigid, the weight of the passenger pressing against me like a second body, colder than the grave. The boy trembled in his seat, clutching the bundle so tightly the cloth strained against its edges. His lips moved in frantic whispers, too fast for prayer, too steady for panic. At last I leaned forward, voice low but sharp. What are you carrying, boy? You said it's his. What did you mean? The child's eyes flashed wide, panic sparking there. He shook his head violently, hugging the bundle closer. Show me, I pressed. Now. The conductor's gaze flicked toward us, his lantern trembling faintly. His lips parted as if to intervene, but he said nothing. Perhaps he feared the truth as much as the boy. The train jolted suddenly, throwing us against the seats. The bundle slipped from the boy's arms. He let out a cry, scrambling, but I caught it first, my fingers clutching rough cloth. It was heavier than I expected, solid, cold. I pulled the wrappings aside. A pocket watch, large and ornate, gleamed in the lantern light. Its silver face was cracked, its hands frozen at 11:59. Intricate etchings spiraled along the casing, symbols I didn't recognize. The chain rattled softly, as though moved by breath. The boy lunged forward, trying to snatch it back. Don't touch it, he cried, voice breaking. I held it out of reach. What is this? His face paled. It's his, the passenger's. He lost it when he died. If he takes it back, he finishes the journey. The cushion beside me creaked violently, the invisible weight shifting closer, hungrier. A wave of cold surged from the seat, frost blooming across the metal rail. The conductor cursed under his breath, backing a step away. You shouldn't have uncovered it. The boy sobbed, reaching with desperate hands. Please, wrap it again. Don't let him see it. But it was too late. The watch ticked once, then again, though its hands never moved. The sound echoed sharp and clear in the silent carriage. Tick, tick, tick. The passenger leaned into me, unseen lips brushing my ear, voice jagged and eager. Mine. The lamps flickered violently, plunging the train into momentary blackness. And when the light steadied, the watch in my palm was warm, burning, alive. The silver watch throbbed against my palm like a second heartbeat, its warmth unnatural, its ticking impossibly loud. The cracked glass caught the lantern light, fracturing it into jagged lines that danced across the carriage walls. The boy sobbed into his hands, rocking back and forth. You've woken it, he whispered. Now he knows. The conductor's face had gone pale. His lantern dipped as if even its flame recoiled. That watch has no right to move, he said, voice taut. It stopped the night he died. been frozen ever since. Until now, the ticking grew louder, faster, though the hands remained frozen at 1 minute to midnight. Each tick seemed to echo inside my skull, syncing with the pounding of my pulse. I raised it closer, studying the engravings etched along its case. Spirals, curves, strange symbols that looked neither wholly human nor wholly natural. The patterns seemed to shift when I blinked, twisting into new arrangements, forming words I almost understood. The passenger's seat groaned beside me. Pressure leaned against my shoulder, heavier now, as if his whole weight pressed to break through. My breath fogged in sharp bursts. Then the voice came not in my ear this time, but from the watch itself. "Finish." I nearly dropped it. "Finish what?" I demanded aloud. The boy lunged, clutching at my sleeve. "Don't listen. That's how he binds you." But the words had already lodged in my bones. The watch ticked faster still, a manic rattle, the sound of a countdown to something vast and final. The conductor gripped the lantern harder, his knuckles white. "He was holding it when he died," he muttered. "Never let it go. When the body was found, the watch had stopped. And since then, so has he until now." I turned the watch over. On the back, beneath the scratches of time, a single phrase was engraved in sharp, curling script. "For the journey unfinished." The ticking stopped. Silence crashed into the carriage like a wave. My own heartbeat thundered in my ears, waiting, dreading the next sound. Then, bong! The watch struck a single chime, low and heavy, vibrating through my bones. The lamps flickered, and every passenger's face blurred again, smearing like wet ink. For a heartbeat, I thought the entire world had dissolved. When the light steadied, the boy's bundle was empty on the floor. The watch had chosen me now. The passenger whispered through my skin, words as cold as the grave. "We ride together." The chime of the watch still reverberated in my chest. When I realized the boy was no longer moving, his sobs had stopped mid-breath. His small hands clutched at air, frozen, as if the bundle he had once held were still there. I leaned forward. "Boy?" His eyes lifted to me, wide and gleaming with terror. His lips parted, but no sound came. He raised a trembling finger, pointing not at me, but at the space beside me. The passenger's pressure deepened. It was no longer a weight near me, but through me, as though he had shifted closer, half inside my skin. My arm burned with cold, and the watch in my palm ticked once more, louder than before. The conductor lurched forward. "Not now," he muttered, his voice breaking with a rare edge of panic. Not the boy. Not yet. But it was already happening. The boy's form shuddered, blurred, like smoke whipped by an unseen wind. His outline stretched thin, unraveling in strands of shadow and light. His voice finally escaped, high and raw. "Don't let him finish." Then, with a sudden silence, he was gone. The seat sagged faintly where he had been. But when I reached out, only emptiness met my hand. His bundle lay forgotten on the floorcloth, wrinkled, hollow. The train rattled harder, as though celebrating its toll. The whistle shrieked into the night, not in signal, but in triumph. I turned on the conductor, fury breaking past fear. "You knew this would happen." He shook his head, eyes fixed on the hollow where the boy had been. "No," he rasped. "It's too soon. The third stop was the toll. The boy should have been safe, unless his gaze snapped to the watch in my hand, burning now with unnatural heat. Unless you've changed the rules. The watch ticked steadily, the sound of inevitability. I clenched it tight, my palm blistering from its heat. If this is the key, then I'll use it. I'll end this journey. The passenger's presence pressed deeper into me, colder, hungrier. His voice slid like ice into my thoughts. End it, with me. The conductor staggered back, shaking his head. You don't understand. If you try to end it, you may finish his journey, and then he'll never leave. The lamps flickered violently, plunging the carriage into a storm of shadows, and for the first time, I wondered if the casebook hadn't brought me here to stop him. But to replace him, the train screamed into the night, iron wheels grinding like teeth on stone. My body swayed with its rhythm, but the real pull was inside me, the passenger sinking deeper into my bones, as if each mile tightened his grip. The conductor lifted his lantern, but its glow seemed smaller now, barely enough to hold back the pressing dark. Fourth stop's near, he muttered. His voice cracked. This is where the living shouldn't look. What happens at the fourth stop? I demanded. He met my eyes, shadows etching his wrinkles deeper. That's when the train collects those who never got their last goodbye. The whistle howled, and with a lurch the train slowed. Through the grime-streaked window I saw a platform, dim and spectral. It wasn't wood or stone, but something in between, shifting, insubstantial, as if it might collapse into mist at any second. Figures stood waiting. Not passengers, not fully people. Their forms shimmered like candle flames, each face locked in a mask of yearning. They leaned forward as if straining for someone who would never arrive. One by one, they stepped into the carriage. Their bodies didn't move so much as fade through, seeping inside with no sound of doors or footsteps. Their hollow eyes scanned the rows of blurred passengers. Then they turned toward me, every head tilted, jerking in unnatural unison. Their mouths opened. A chorus of whispers seeped out, threads of grief that tangled into words. Say goodbye, say goodbye. My throat tightened. I clutched the watch, its heat pulsing into my skin. The passenger within me stirred, eager, almost joyful. For the first time, I felt his hunger as if it were my own. The conductor barked, raising the lantern. Back, he isn't yours. The spirits recoiled, but did not vanish. Instead, they swarmed around me, brushing my shoulders, my chest, searching. The sensation was like being peeled apart, layer by layer. One face pressed, close, eyes wide, lips trembling. It was the boy. His mouth formed the words soundlessly. Don't let them take you. I lunged forward, but his figure dissolved into smoke before I could touch him. The platform slipped away into the night. The train surged forward, faster, harder. The spirits lingered, scattered among the seats, watching me with empty longing. The conductor lowered the lantern, his hand shaking. Fourth stop has passed. Next comes the choosing. The passenger inside me whispered, calm, inevitable. And you already know who's chosen. The train did not roar this time. It hummed low, steady, almost like a heartbeat. That silence pressed heavier on me than the earlier clamor. Every blurred passenger sat motionless, their faces half-formed, their bodies trembling as though they were waiting for a verdict. The conductor's lantern sputtered, its flame thinning to a blue thread. He stared at the ceiling, as though something unseen loomed above us. "The choosing," he said, voice hushed but grim. "The train doesn't run on steam or rails. It runs on balance. Every journey must claim one soul." The watch in my hand pulsed with heat, ticking louder, faster, its rhythm syncing with my chest. My breaths came ragged. The passenger inside me whispered softly, almost soothingly, "Why resist? The seat is already yours." The blurred passengers shifted. Their heads turned in unison toward me, their stares locked like a dozen nooses tightening. The air grew thin, pressing down until each inhale felt stolen. I stood, gripping the watch so hard it cut my palm. "If it's a soul you need, then take his," I shouted, pointing to the empty space beside me, where the passenger's presence coiled like smoke. The carriage trembled. Shadows stretched long and jagged across the floor. The passenger chuckled low in my ear, though no one else seemed to hear. "You think I'm the offering?" "No, detective. I'm the collector." The train lurched, throwing me against the seat. The lantern flared once, then nearly died. In that flickering moment, the blurred passengers leaned closer, mouths opening wide in silent screams. Their eyes glowed faintly, and I felt them trying to pull something from inside me, not flesh, but memory, identity, the essence of who I was. The conductor shoved the lantern between us, its dim glow pushing them back a fraction. "Fight it, detective. If you surrender, you'll never leave this train." But the pull was relentless. Images flashed in my head, my office, empty cases, the dust of years without recognition, my failures, my solitude, my longing to matter. The passenger's voice slid through it all like a blade. "You wanted a case. Now you are the case." The watch chimed once sharp, final. The choosing was complete. The carriage went utterly still. Every blurred passenger lowered their gaze, as if in acknowledgment. The conductor's face crumpled, and in my chest the truth settled like iron. The train had chosen me. The moment the choosing settled, the atmosphere shifted. The blurred passengers slumped back into their seats, their hollow eyes averted, as though the verdict had silenced them. The air felt heavier, thick with finality. The conductor stared at me, lantern trembling in his grasp. "I told you," he said, voice raw, "every ride takes a toll. And now it's you." My throat tightened, but anger cut through fear. "No. If this train runs on balance, then balance can be bartered. Nothing is fixed." The passenger laughed in my head, deep and resonant, like the echo of a tuned door slamming shut. "You cannot bargain with hunger. I am not a judge, detective. I am a journey. You are simply its fuel." I leaned forward, clenching the watch until its edges bit into my skin. "Then hear me. If you're a journey, you need more than fuel. You need a guide. Someone to read the book, someone to finish what the others couldn't." The ticking faltered for the first time. The passenger's presence shifted, no longer crushing, but considering. The silence stretched, heavy and uncertain. The conductor hissed, "You don't know what you're offering." I ignored him. "You wanted me because I opened the casebook, because I understood. Fine, then let me prove I can be more useful to you alive than as another lost whisper in this train." The carriage lights flickered. Shadows swirled like smoke, spiraling around my seat. The voice pressed into me, colder, sharper. What bargain? I forced myself to breathe steady. You let me solve the unfinished cases in the book, one by one. You give me time. For every case solved, the train moves further. When I finish them all, you get your journey's end. The watch pulsed hot, searing, then cooled abruptly. The blurred passengers lifted their heads, as if drawn by this shift. Their hollow eyes locked on me, expectant. The passenger whispered, voice stretched thin with amusement. You seek to rewrite the rules of the dead with the ink of the living. Yes, I said, steady, because that's what a detective does. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the watch chimed once, a softer note than before. The train lurched, surging into darkness. The conductor closed his eyes, despair written deep in his face. You've done it now, he murmured. You've bound yourself to the casebook more tightly than ever. The passengers' laughter filled me, quiet, satisfied. So be it. We ride until the last page is turned. The train's rhythm changed after the bargain, no longer frantic, but steady, deliberate, like a beast pacing toward its prey. The blurred passengers sat unervingly still, their eyes fixed on nothing, as though they too waited for what came next. The conductor kept his gaze low, lantern clutched tight. You've made a mistake, he whispered. The fifth stop doesn't forgive bargains. The whistle shrieked, long and mournful. The train slowed, grinding into a halt. Through the windows, the world outside blurred. Shadows smearing into pale streaks until they resolved into another platform. This one was different. The others had been spectral, half-made. But the fifth stop was sharp, clear, almost too clear. A row of figures stood along its edge, each one distinct, their faces familiar in a way that chilled me. I leaned forward. Recognition struck like lightning. These weren't strangers. They were echoes of people I had read about in the casebook. Names from cold reports, victims of forgotten crimes, the unsolved and the lost. One stepped forward. A woman in a torn coat, her eyes dark pools. Her lips parted, and though no breath escaped, her words pressed directly into my skull. Find me. Another followed, a man with half his face blurred by shadow. His voice was a rasp of stone. Finish what you started. The platform swarmed with them now, dozens, maybe more, each radiating despair. They climbed aboard without doors, without sound, sliding into seats across from the blurred passengers. Their presence twisted the air, filling it with a pressure that made my ribs ache. The conductor lifted his lantern, his jaw clenched. These are the ones bound to you now. Every case you've sworn to finish has weight. They will ride until you solve them or until the train eats you whole. The passenger stirred within me, pleased. His whisper slid through my mind like smoke through cracks. Your bargain lives, detective. The train has delivered your cases. The watch grew heavy in my palm, almost unbearable, its ticking wild and uneven. Each face that stared at me was another chain, another story unfinished. I swallowed hard. The casebook hadn't been just a lure. It was a contract, and now every name within it had climbed aboard this cursed train. The whistle wailed once more, and the train surged into motion. Behind me, one of the new passengers leaned forward, their eyes hollow but burning with need. Detective, they whispered, we won't wait forever. The casebook burned in my hands, not with fire, but with words ink that pulsed and shifted as though it were alive. I tried to keep it shut, but the clasp strained, the pages fluttering against invisible wind. At last the book tore itself open. Lines of writing crawled across the paper, not neat notes or tidy reports, but jagged sentences scrawled in many hands, overlapping, bleeding into one another. Some were in languages I barely recognized, others in cryptic symbols. Yet somehow I understood them all. They whispered, not aloud, but inside my skull, a chorus of voices threading together. He never left the station. Her shoes were under the bridge. The key was in the drawer all along. Each phrase tugged at my mind like a hook, trying to drag me into their unfinished stories. My vision blurred with flashes faces I had never met, rooms I had never entered, crimes I had never solved. The watch ticked faster in rhythm with the voices, its warmth searing through my skin. The passenger inside me stirred, purring with satisfaction. Yes, hear them. They've waited for someone like you. Feed their hunger. Feed mine. I slammed the book shut, gasping. The voices dulled but did not vanish. They lingered under my skin, restless, waiting for me to choose. The conductor's lantern swayed as he leaned closer. His eyes were shadowed, his face grim. You've tied yourself to it now. The casebook isn't just a record. It's a gate. Every page is a lock waiting for you to force it open. Then I'll open them, I said, though my voice trembled. One by one. His jaw tightened. And if you fail? If one story remains unsolved? Before I could answer, the train screeched violently, nearly throwing me from my seat. Sparks cascaded outside the windows, as though the rails themselves protested. The blurred passengers shifted, their faces warping into grotesque grins. The new passengers leaned forward in unison, their hollow eyes fixed on me. The casebook opened itself again, a single page glowing faintly in the dim lantern light. A new entry had etched itself across the parchment, the ink wet and fresh. The last train passenger. My heart stopped. That was this case, the one I was living through now. The passenger's voice filled me, cold and triumphant. Solve yourself, detective, or ride forever. The words on the glowing page bled into me like ink spilled across my veins. The last train passenger. My name was written below, bold and final. Not just a victim, not just a witness. I was the subject. My throat tightened as I read the lines that formed beneath it, words scrawling themselves into existence before my eyes. A detective who sought a case and found only his own. The casebook pulsed, its weight nearly unbearable. The watch ticked in frantic rhythm, as though mocking me. The conductor's lantern wavered, throwing his face into fractured shadows. Now you see, he said. The book doesn't record the dead, it consumes the living. Every case written is a life unraveling. Yours has just begun. I slammed the book shut, but the words echoed inside me, impossible to silence. My memories twisted, uncertain. The empty office, the years without cases, had those been mine? Or had they been written for me? Was I a detective or just a story the book had bound to this cursed train? The blurred passengers swayed in their seats, their mouths stretching in silent laughter. The newly arrived victims leaned forward, whispering fragments of their own unsolved endings. But beneath it all, the passenger's voice cut clear and sharp. Detective, solve yourself. What crime chained you here? What truth did you bury? I clutched the watch, the heat scalding now, blistering my palm. My reflection warped across its cracked glass my face, but wrong. Older, more tired, with shadows too deep beneath the eyes. The man staring back at me was both me and someone I hadn't yet become. The casebook fluttered open again, its pages blank except for a single question scrawled across the center. What was your last choice? The words stabbed through me. My mind reeled, fragments of forgotten nights swirling an empty desk. A letter unopened, a train ticket in my pocket. Had I chosen to board this train willingly? Or had the train chosen me? The conductor stepped closer, his lantern dim but steady. Answer the page, he urged. If you don't, it will answer for you. And once it writes the ending, there's no changing it. The passenger inside me whispered like a lover against my ear. Tell it nothing. Let me write you instead. The casebook waited. The watch ticked. The train roared on. And for the first time, I realized that the greatest mystery I had ever faced was not the crimes of others, but the truth I had hidden from myself. The casebook's page glowed with its question. What was your last choice? And no matter how tightly I tried to shut it, the words seeped into me. My head spun, memories tearing loose like fragile wallpaper, peeled back to reveal rot beneath. I was no longer in the carriage. For a moment I was back in my office. The sagging blinds, the stale smoke, the single bulb humming above. The emptiness that had swallowed me for years. No clients, no recognition, just dust, loneliness, and a hunger to matter. On my desk lay a single envelope. I remembered it now. A case file slid through my door by unseen hands. It hadn't come with a client, just a note in spidery script. For the detective who still believes. Inside was the first entry of the casebook. A mystery unsolved. A hook baited with desperation. I hadn't hesitated. I'd followed it, clung to it. Let it pull me into the night like a drowning man, grasping a rope. And then, yes, now I remembered at the station, the last train had been waiting. Doors open. No conductor in sight. No passengers visible. Just the hum of something alive, something patient. I had stepped aboard. It hadn't taken me. I had chosen. The vision shattered. I was back in the carriage, sweating, my breath ragged. The conductor's lantern trembled in his hand as he watched me. You see it now, he said. The train doesn't steal the unwilling. It tempts the desperate. You boarded because you could not stand to be forgotten. The watch in my palm burned hotter, as though branding me with that truth. The passenger inside me purred with satisfaction. Yes, detective, you made the choice. You sought me out. You called me into being. The blurred passengers swayed, grinning wider, feeding off my realization. The victims of the casebook leaned forward, whispering harsher now. Solve us. Free us. Finish us. My knees shook under the weight of it. All this time I had believed I was chosen by fate, cursed by chance. But no, the curse had been my own hunger, my inability to let mystery go unsolved. The casebook scrawled fresh lines across the glowing page. The detective's crime, obsession. His punishment, the journey. The conductor lowered his lantern, his voice breaking. Now you understand. The train doesn't carry passengers. It carries confessions. The passenger inside me whispered one final word, soft and merciless. Guilty. The word guilty rang in my skull long after the casebook's page dimmed. It wasn't just ink, it was a verdict. My obsession had chained me here, and the train was my sentence. The blurred passengers rocked with silent laughter, their distorted mouths curling wide. The victims leaned forward, their whispers clawing at my ears. Finish us. Solve us. Free us. But over the chaos, one voice slid through, smooth as oil the passengers. You can escape this, detective. I can give you what you crave. Not freedom, no. Something better. The watch pulsed in my palm, each tick hammering in sync with his words. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath. And what is that? His presence pressed deeper, coiling like smoke around my thoughts. A place in the casebook, not as prey, but as master. Every mystery written there, every unfinished life, it could be yours to command. You won't solve them. You'll own them. The idea chilled me, yet part of me trembled with temptation. To control the cases instead of being devoured by them. To finally matter, not as a detective scraping for crumbs, but as the one holding the strings. The conductor stepped forward, lantern flaring weakly. Don't listen. His voice cracked with desperation. That's how he grows stronger. He'll dress the chain as a crown and convince you its power. The passenger chuckled darkly. And what has the lantern-bearer given you, detective? Only riddles and doom. I offer choice. I offer respect. Solve nothing, carry nothing. Instead, let them all ride for you. The victims shuddered, their faces twisting with fear at his words. Their whispers grew frantic. Don't let him take us. We'll never leave. The casebook snapped open on its own. A blank page waited, glowing faintly. The passenger's voice purred. All it takes is a name, yours. Write it here, and you'll no longer be fuel, you'll be fire. The pen appeared in my hand, cold, heavy, my fingers curled around it before I realized. The book trembled expectantly, eager for ink, eager for surrender. I stared at the empty page. My heart thundered. This was power. Yes, but power built on becoming the very thing I had sworn to fight. A jailer of the lost. A detective turned jailer of truth. The conductor's eyes burned through the shadows. If you write your name, detective, you'll solve nothing. You'll just join him. The passenger whispered, almost tenderly. And isn't that what you've always wanted? To stop chasing and finally belong? The pen weighed like iron in my hand, cold, unforgiving. Its nib gleamed, faintly in the dim carriage light, ready to carve my surrender into the glowing page. The casebook throbbed with anticipation, its blank sheet as hungry as the blurred passengers swaying in their seats. I tried to loosen my grip, but my fingers refused. The passenger's presence slithered deeper into my thoughts, coiling around my will like barbed wire. Right, detective, he whispered. End the chase. End the burden. Once your name is written, you'll never be forgotten. You'll never be small again. The promise stabbed at my old wounds. Forgotten years. Empty nights in my office. Dust collecting on my desk while the world moved on without me. A nobody who had wanted so desperately to matter. And here it was, the solution. The chance to etch myself permanently into mystery. The conductor raised his lantern, his face twisted with urgency. Fight him. That book doesn't immortalize, it devours. Every name written in it is fuel for the train. Look at them. He gestured toward the blurred passengers. For a heartbeat, their faces sharpened. Men and women once real, now little more than shadows. Their mouths opened soundlessly, desperate, hollow. They had written their names. They had believed the same lie. The passenger's chuckle slithered through me. Regret makes poor company, detective. They hesitated. You will not. You know you want this. The watch in my pocket rattled, ticks growing frantic. The victims pressed closer, whispering violently, now. Don't write it. Don't. He feeds on your ink. The book's glow intensified. The pen burned against my skin, and my hand, traitorous, began to lower toward the page. I fought back, straining against his will, but each thought of my failures, the empty office, the silence of forgotten days strengthened him. Why struggle? The passenger murmured, You have always been mine. The train came for you because you asked for it, because you begged to matter. My knees buckled under the weight of his truth. The nib hovered above the glowing page. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. The casebook's words trembled faintly, waiting for the ink. Write your name. The conductor stepped forward, his lantern blazing brighter than ever, his voice breaking into a roar. Detective, if you write, you erase yourself. If you resist, you live. Choose. The carriage shook. The train screamed on its tracks. My hand trembled above the page. The passenger leaned close, his whisper the sharp edge of temptation. One stroke, detective. One signature, and you'll finally belong. The pen hovered above the glowing page, trembling in my grip. The casebook pulsed with hunger, every fiber of it begging for my name. The blurred passengers leaned forward as one, silent anticipation filling the carriage like thick smoke. The passenger's whisper slid down my spine. One stroke, one word, be remembered forever. My hand began to descend, muscles aching with the pull of his will. The conductor shouted, lantern blazing, resist him. The moment you write, you're no longer a detective, you're a prisoner. The victims pressed closer, their faces straining against the blur. They screamed now, voices sharp enough to split my skull. Don't, don't, don't. The watch in my pocket rattled violently, its ticking now a desperate drumbeat. I yanked it free, clutching it with my free hand. The metal burned, white-hot, searing into my palm. And with that pain came clarity. This watch wasn't his. It was mine. A reminder of time slipping away, yes, but also of choice. Every second was a decision. Every tick was mine to own. I closed my eyes, forcing breath into my lungs. The passenger hissed with fury. You cannot resist me. You boarded willingly. You are mine. But when my eyes opened, I no longer looked at the glowing page. I looked at the blurred passengers, the victims, the conductor, and finally, at the casebook itself. I whispered, steady and clear, I won't write my name. I'll write yours. Before he could stop me, I slashed the pen across the page. Not my name, his. The letters burned, black fire spilling from the ink, twisting as though the page itself fought to contain them. The carriage erupted with screams, his screams. The passenger thrashed inside me, clawing, tearing, but the ink held him fast. The casebook shook, its glow blinding, as the blurred passengers screamed in triumph. The victims' whispers rose into a roar of freedom. The train lurched. The windows shattered into darkness. One by one, the passengers dissolved into mist, their chains broken. The conductor dropped to his knees, lantern flickering weakly. The casebook slammed shut. The pen vanished, and the silence that followed was vast and endless. I staggered forward, gasping. The train was gone. I was standing alone on the empty platform of the midnight station, the casebook heavy in my hands. Its pages were still, its glow extinguished, but the cover felt warm, alive. The final words etched across the leather whispered to me, "Case closed." And somewhere in the silence, the faintest echo lingered his voice, furious and promising. "This is not the last train, detective. Only the first.